Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Adam Kiss Show. Today I'm going to be talking about if most of directing is actually just casting. As a director myself and as an actor, I have a unique perspective on the situation because I see both sides of it, and I'm very excited to get into the nitty-gritty of this subject with you. But before I do, I'm going to ask you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, give us a thumbs up and share, and comment below what other videos you'd like me to do. All right, so let's get into the subject of whether 90% of directing is just casting. So I wanted to start this video today with an anecdote about Michael Caine. This was after he had filmed The Man Who Would Be King, starring himself and Sean Connery, and it was directed by John Huston, the great film director. And the funny story, as a side note about that movie, is that originally that was an idea by Huston because Huston was a big fan of Kipling, so he wanted to do this movie for a long time. Originally he wanted, I believe, Clark Gable and Humphrey Bogart in the lead roles. And then he wanted Robert Redford and Paul Newman. And then finally he settled for Michael Caine and Sean Connery. So over the years, I believe it was originally in the 50s that he wanted to do it. And then it was in the 60s, it was Newman and Redford. And then in the 70s, when it was finally made, was when, it was with Caine and Connery, who actually knew each other from before they were both famous. But a story for another day. The point is, in this interview that Michael Caine was giving, he mentioned that most directors he'd worked with gave him a lot of direction, a lot of specific notes, and that he noticed while making this film with John Huston, he wasn't getting much notes at all. So he was kind of almost a little uncomfortable by that. He almost wanted to get more feedback from the director. So he kind of went up to John Huston and said, am I doing okay? And I believe that John Huston replied something like, "You're doing fine. You know that 90% of directing is casting." And that's something that I've heard from many people. And again, that's something that Michael Caine attributed in this anecdote to John Huston, and I'm sure that John Huston said it. But I've heard so many things from so many other directors, so many other people in the business have said a similar thing. But is it really true? Well, yes and no. I believe, I'm a very hands-on director, so I'm not the kind of director who just goes in and, puts my hands up and just lets everything be. So I definitely am very hands-on. I have my specific vision that I'm going after and all of that. So I do that. But then think of it this way. When you're casting something, and I was literally in my last feature film, My Last Words, I was the casting director as well as the director. I was the casting director. So I was completely hands-on in the casting process, and I really don't understand how some directors can't be even more hands-on in the casting process, because it's really so important, because you have your vision going into the movie, and then it's about finding the people to fit that vision. And I'm open-minded to changing things, all the time, and things like that, and adapting and things like that. You have to be adaptable. For example, David Lean, the great filmmaker who is one of my idols, he was very, in a certain way, closed-minded about that. He felt that like his thing was he had the movie in his head, and his job was to make the actors do exactly what was in his head. Now, I think that's great, and partially, obviously, I can be like that, but then also partially I can be adaptable, so I'm not as extreme as that, I would say. But I have a very strong vision, at least for my projects, so I have a very strong feeling for what the movie should be, what the character should be. But then I'm open to having people change my mind. But the point is, when you do have a strong vision, you have the gift of being able to cast it. You have the choice. So you can decide there what you're going to do. And a lot of the decisions of the film are made in the casting process, because you can only change a person's performance so much. I think that Spielberg mentioned that, like, you can only change so much. Maybe you can make a scene 10% better if you keep working and working and working on it. Or you can just move on and keep going. I believe that that was an anecdote from Saving Private Ryan that someone told about Spielberg, that he told that to a cast member. So again, there's a lot you can change in a performance. There's a lot you can talk to. As an actor myself, thankfully, I know from being directed several times in other projects on stage, screen, everywhere, I know what I like and don't like from a director, so I try to be my dream director when I'm directing all the other actors, and I feel that that's so important to be a great director. And the important thing with being a director is you have to be strong. You have to be very strong. You have to be strong in your vision, you have to be relentless in your pursuit of your vision, and then you can adapt to changes. But you can't be just willy-nilly all over the place saying, oh, here's a new idea, and I love new ideas. I love throwing the plan out the window. I throw the plan out the window all the time. As a matter of fact, with my cinematographer, a lot of times I threw the shot list out the window. I said, no, let's not do that scene here. Let's do it this way instead. I did all kinds of things like that. So I love just throwing the shot list out the window. I'm very meticulous about crafting a shot list before and having a plan, but then I believe in throwing the plan out the window sometimes. So I do all kinds of things. I'm definitely not a fan of storyboards. I'm a fan of a shot list, but then I'm a fan of throwing it all out the window once the time comes. But the point is, that doesn't change the same vision that I have in my mind. And that's a vision that, as a director, you have to be a great communicator. You have to communicate that vision to everyone on the set. And that's what everyone is there to do. You have to communicate your vision, and they are there to bring it to reality, to bring it to life. Because you can't do everything yourself. I mean, on my last feature film, My Last Words, I was the director, the producer, executive producer, the casting director, production designer, costume designer, all of that, location manager, all of that, everything. So many hats I had to fill. And Christina Kiss as well, she filled so many hats, that's crazy. She's also my fellow producer, which is absolutely incredible. She's my mom, in case a lot of you don't know, Christina Kiss, and she also provided the soundtrack for the film. So again, all of us in the production, we were wearing a lot of hats, which I feel is an absolutely incredible thing for a director to do, because a lot of times in these big budget productions, the director finds that he doesn't really have that much control. Like, the movie's kind of taken out of his hands in so many ways, which I really cannot imagine. I would not like to do that kind of thing. I mean, I definitely do believe in the auteur theory, certainly with my movie. I mean, I was the author of the movie. I mean, I was the writer, the director, the producer, all of that. I kind of thought it into existence, and then suddenly it existed. So all of that. And then, so going hand in hand with that, if you're the author of the movie, all the responsibility is on yours. If it's good, if it's bad, all of that. You just have to take responsibility, and there's always circumstances out of your control. Every movie has circumstances, whether it's a $200 million movie or a tiny micro-budget production. They all have circumstances, but all that matters is what's on the screen. And casting is a huge part of that, and that's why I sort of agree with that statement. Perhaps not as much as John Huston, because I do believe I give plenty of direction on set. I influence everything in the performances and all of that. But I totally agree with him as well. So I do believe that casting is a huge part of directing. Great. Well, thanks so much for listening to The Adam Kiss Show. Definitely subscribe and tune in for more episodes. And that's all, folks.